I think if you take anything away from this video is that perfectionism is not your friend. I'm talking about parasocial relationships, society obsessed with fame, how that creates loneliness. And that doesn't mean that you don't have friends, right? Like you can have friends and still be lonely. This is not a new phenomenon, right? That is the existential dread of feeling this anxiety of our mortality, but also this sense of feeling like you on the inside will never be fully connected to other people. But I think why this is a growing epidemic is very different than the way it was before, because we've externalized where meaning and happiness comes from. That's what I wanted to talk about. Notes are insane, but hopefully you can keep up because it's going to be real bumpy. I thought of something funny. I swear this is related. It's like, maybe the people in the neurodivergent club can keep up. And then I started to think about it. I don't know if I've ever met somebody who is neurotypical. Apparently, it's like 1 in 7 people are neurodivergent. And it's interesting to be in the mental health field where you see this boom of neurodivergent people. And then I was like, but what does it really mean to be neurotypical? And then it's so underwhelming to realize that the definition of being neurotypical just means someone who thinks and processes information in ways that are typical within society or that culture. And I'm like, so basically boring people. I'm just kidding. Okay, you guys have noticed this as well. But as soon as a camera turns on, right, you get into a pose or you act different, you put on a mask. And so my goal ultimately, especially being introverted, is to be able to unmask, because it is true that we have our brain organizes our persona, our being, in public and private selves. So who you are in public and who you are in private can be very distinctly different. And that's kind of interesting. And as a therapist, something that I notice when we unmask and something that I notice when I unmask is that everybody is lonely and everybody is insane. Since starting with this particular kind of format of just talking, and I thought about it, like, what are people connecting to? And I think it's buzzword authenticity. It's just that sense of being real, because we don't have a lot of that. Like, we've commodified everything, and of the culture that we've created around what it means to be human, what it means to be real, what it means. I'm joking when I say authenticity because we hear that all the time, but what the heck does that mean? And why, when we are connected to people online, that we still feel this sense of not being in connection with other people. Let me start off with this story, okay? A few weeks ago, my sister and I saw that Extreme Sisters, which is a reality show. We had applications open to sign up. And basically this show is, first let me say, it's a TLC show, so you know what kind of show it is. It's a guilty pleasure of mine, okay, to watch trash television. It's not Fiance or what, 500-pound sisters or 1,000-pound sisters, something like that, but it is weird. But I have a twin sister and we're so codependent with each other, and that's what the show is about. And we thought, okay, that could be kind of fun to be featured on that show. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I was kind of fantasizing about it. And then I realized then I would become famous, as in people might recognize me as this weird codependent sisters. And while that's true, I realized that the story of my life would be written for me. It would be curated in a way that I don't have control over. And to be famous, I think price that someone pays for fame, their privacy and their sense of self, because they have to be liked and curated by other people. They have to be, their value and their worth starts to be derived from how much other people value them. That's a hard price to pay. The reason people don't allow themselves to be real is because either they're afraid of the cancel culture, but no, they're afraid of being actually seen, and because we've created this idea of what it means to be an influencer or what it means to be a particular way, be in the light, right? Like I said before, we put our mask on and we make our mask look like everyone else. And then we kind of lose the beauty in diversity or just like being real. It makes me think about this episode in Black Mirrors. This is my favorite episode. called, I think it's called 15 Million Merits. And basically, and forgive me if I get some of the details wrong, I'm just like going off quick notes and memory. In this world, it's very mundane. They have, and if you haven't watched Black Mirrors, it's a show with different episodes on like the satire of how technology kind of creates a, what is the word? Like an apocalyptic version of the world. Anyway, my poor descriptions. In this episode, they're on these treadmills. They have to get merit points, and it's like a really bleak and sad world, and they live in these cubicles. And the main character, I think his name is Bing. Is his name Bing? Somebody. Bing from Black Mirror. Bing. Yep, his name is Bing. Who wrote this show? Anyway, the main character, Bing, he's this dude who, I don't want to spoil it, but basically has a lot of merit points, so he just doesn't care. Everybody there is like really depressed. A little bit more on the background of this world. They have a very oppressive society, and the inhabitants are in these enclosed spaces, which is made up of mindless visuals, surrounding screens, and different games and cartoons that they are constantly entertained by, but they live a very monotonous routine, and most of them don't interact with one another. And these merits that they have, they can spend on necessities, or quote necessities, such as snacks from the vending machine and whatnot. And these entertainments are very commercial. These virtual avatars that they have are their doppelgangers, and that's usually where they write comments anonymously. Sounds familiar? Oh, and they all wear the same uniform, right? And in many ways, it's very mundane. And I think when we think about the mundane, we think depressed, right? That this is the kind of society that we live in now. If something's not always happening, if we're not always being entertained, then we're kind of falling in a black hole because we've externalized where meaning and happiness comes from. And so in this episode, he meets this girl and he hears her singing in the bathroom, and she's singing this beautiful song, and you should try out for that show, Hot Shots. And it's like a parody of an American Idol show. And basically the judges will judge you and kind of give you this opportunity to live outside of this sad world that they live in. And so I think he like gives her the opportunity to go on the show. Spoiler alert, the spoiler alert right here. If you don't want to fast forward to another part, but I will say that basically they corrupt her. They corrupt this woman after like they were like, you have a lovely voice. They even drug her. They give her this kind of relieve her anxiety. It's like a compliance medicine, or they call it like couplants, but like I think it's like compliance. And they convince her to be part of the adult industry film. He sees this and he's like really heartbroken. He's angry. He takes a piece of glass and he shows up to the show later on, and he has this whole spiel about how, like how none of this is real and F everything, blah, blah, blah. And then they give him his own show. And then you see later on in the end, you're like wonder if he's like out is he in the real world? You see the nature scenery in the background. And he has this like show where he holds the glass up to his neck and he spits some truth, right? But you wonder if he's still in the matrix in a way, or if he's broken through that. And let me just say, I'm not saying that money and fame and all those things corrupt everybody, power. But I think that's kind of the world that we're living in today, where people are living inside these glass cubicles. And when we look at our screens, we are looking at a fake life. And I know people are going to probably think about that episode on Black Mirror's Nosedive where it's about likes. But I also think that being in the society, in the time that we live in now, makes us lonely because we think that the only way to be happy is to be liked and also to have fame, like to have something beyond the mundane. Like even though the simple pleasures in life, which we can afford now, and not everybody, but like we, especially as a first generation immigrant, there are certain things that my parents never had the privilege to. And what I struggle with, and I want to pull up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, right? And what a lot of my clients struggle with is not necessarily the physiological or the safety needs that their parents are trying to provide them. What they are missing now are the love and belonging, this and the self-esteem, because we externalize our self-esteem to just be about recognition, about status. And while those things, because we don't exist, some people live out in the woods by themselves, which sounds nice, very lonely, but we, people who are watching this, we don't. And yes, it is important to have some sort of like a sense of belonging and some place that you fit in within your community, but we've lost that. We are so separate from each other because we're so afraid of looking dumb. We're afraid of being real. And then love and belonging, like we don't get that from our family as much as we used to back then, like this sense of emotional intimacy, sense of emotional connection. So then we start to try to look for that through fame. A lot of the people who become famous, I'm not saying everyone, who just look for fame as a way, and like maybe who stumbled on it by accident, like really talented people, and then the media crushed them, like Amy Winehouse, or a partner was watching a documentary on Nickelback, and there's this idea that Nickelback sucks and they're the worst, but I didn't realize just how famous they were and how loved they were at some point, because I do recall, and I know a lot of their songs. This is how you remind me. Yeah, that song. Basically, in this documentary, for me, I felt guilt and compassion for them because I didn't realize that they became so loved and then so hated, and they still tour and they still make music and they're still like a band. And I'm just like, oh, look at us judging them. But why? And I think that is the reason we're so lonely, is because we're so judgmental, because we're so driven by this idea that in order to be happy, you have to be special. And not to mention, you have to be perfect. You can't make mistakes. You can't look a fool. You have to stand out. You have to be exceptional in some way. When in reality, just being yourself, and then we look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization, just being yourself. Be yourself. From Just Friends. As I was saying, that we don't need to be exceptional in order to be happy. Like, can we just be happy if we crocheted a hat? Oh my gosh, sorry for these terrible examples. But what I'm trying to say is that we don't have to be like a cog in the machine in order to be fulfilled. We don't have to be the best at something in order to be happy. In truth, there's always going to be someone better than you. But the funny thing is that no one is going to be like you, like exactly like you. And I don't want to take credit for this, but I had a client and she was a teacher and so ironic. If you guys are familiar with Barbizon, she was a teacher in like the modeling, this little, what would you even call it? These classes that were in the early 2000s or whatever, where they would teach you how to be a model so your daughter could be a famous model. In this, she was teaching them about doing your makeup and stuff, but also like kind of instilling a sense of true self-esteem. And this beautiful thing she said was that she said that nobody in this world is going to be like you. Like, if you think about it, you cannot be replicated. Like, that is, unless you're a twin, identical twin like me, like, but we are different in so many ways. I just mean that your life experiences and everything that you've gone through, your voice, your being, your interests, like, there's only one of you. And that's kind of a beautiful thing. Like, if that's not something that makes you feel like, wow, I am unique in that way. And you know what? If this is the only life that I live and there's only one of me, ultimately, what feels good is this sense of connection or being seen, which is not the same as being famous and being loved by everyone, but still being so lonely. I mean, truly being seen. And the only way to do that is to be yourself and to really allow yourself to be vulnerable and take the risk of embarrassing yourself. Then I would choose that. That's the risks that I would take in order to actually experience this middle part of the triangle: love, belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization. I'm not trying to convince you to do that. I'm just saying that realizing that I don't want to be on the show Extreme Sisters because I don't want to become famous, like acting like I was going to become famous, was like liberating, because when you realize you don't care about who likes you, because not everybody who likes you even knows the real you. And the people who really value you and know you, like, that's what matters. Like, your inner circle, the people in your life that know you and see you and make you just be yourself and you can unmask, that's what matters. I think my hope is that me unmasking allows other people to unmask and allows people to be their weird, lonely self with me. I know I was supposed to be talking about parasocial. What this is me kind of speaking to you and being like, you know what? I see you and we're friends in that way, even though I don't know of your existence and you kind of know about mine. But I'll probably chop this video up into two so that you all can keep up, because I know we all have really short attention span. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe and watch part 2. See ya!